Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Report. Let's now delve into the AUC conversation where just this week, President William Ruto and tonight the tensions in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, have sparked urgent diplomatic action as leaders from across the African continent come together to address one of the region's most pressing conflicts. This weekend, a joint summit of the Southern African Development Community SADC and the East African Community EAC will take place in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. After a dramatic turn of events in an extraordinary summit that saw President Felix Tshisekedi of the DRC skip the meeting and Paul Kagame of Rwanda throw jibes at South Africa and DRC, there seems to be some white smoke at the top echelons of the region. The summit, scheduled for this Friday and Saturday, will bring together leaders from both SADC and EAC member states. It follows a key agreement between President William Ruto of Kenya, the current chair of the EAC, and President Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, chairman of SADC. President Ruto confirmed that Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan will graciously host the summit in Dar es Salaam, offering a crucial platform for dialogue. The goal? To find common ground and an effective strategy to bring lasting peace to Eastern DRC. In a statement on Monday, President Ruto expressed optimism about the summit's potential, saying that it would pave the way for a coordinated regional effort to tackle the security crisis. Among the leaders expected to attend are President Felix Tshisekedi of the DRC, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni and Somalia's Hassan Sheikh Mohamud have also confirmed their participation. Despite efforts by the United Nations and other international bodies, the Eastern DRC remains a hotspot for violence. Armed groups, some with ties to foreign governments, continue to wreak havoc. The humanitarian toll is devastating, with millions of people displaced and in need of urgent assistance. With this summit, regional leaders hope to address the underlying causes of the violence, the fight for resources, ethnic tensions, and the role of external actors. It's a delicate issue, but one that requires immediate unified action. The summit will be preceded by a ministerial meeting on Friday, where key foreign ministers and diplomats will lay the groundwork for the heads of state. On Saturday, the leaders will take to the table for the summit itself, where they will discuss potential peacekeeping measures, diplomatic solutions, and strategies to de-escalate the situation. While much remains uncertain, there's hope that this summit could serve as a turning point in the region's efforts to bring peace to the DRC. As this extraordinary summit unfolds, all eyes will be on Dar es Salaam. Will these leaders be able to create a path forward for peace, or will the conflict continue to overshadow the region? George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi. Indeed, that story sets the pace, the precedence for the conversation tonight on the state of the nation, as we address and begin with that issue of EAC and matters SADC and the DRC. Joining me on set is Dismas Mukua. He's a political risk analyst. Thank you, Dismas. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks.
Also joining us, is it now Prof?
Doctor.
Coming soon. I'm elevating you. Dr. Hesbon Owilla. He is also a political analyst and governance expert, as well as
Morara Kebaso.
Tonight, what name do you give you? What title?
A political activist is just fine.
Okay.
I've gotten used to it.
Absolutely. And I noticed you arrived quite heavily tonight.
Yes.
That's how you roll?
Yes.
Okay. We'll be telling the viewers how easy that you do that. But I'll begin with you, Dismas. A lot is happening. Mnangagwa is not in the picture. He's the SADC chairperson. And of course, the Rwanda's President Paul Kagame hit at South Africa over the issues in DRC. Some have argued this is a deflation of the issue, or rather a diversion of this of this specific issue. Let's begin with the DRC itself. Why is it that there seems to be a mismanagement, or why is it running out of control?
Well, I'm not sure that it's running out of control, but it raises fundamental concerns. And the Eastern DRC issue has been around for decades, more than 50 years ago. And as the African leaders have said, it doesn't require a military solution, but rather it requires a political solution. And we have to take note of this key development, that there's going to be a summit between EAC and SADC. So, first of all, the EAC had a meeting under the chairmanship of President Ruto and agreed to have a joint meeting with SADC. And President Mnangagwa and his colleagues accepted that this would be a prudent idea. But one may ask, why is there a need for a joint summit of the regional leaders? And the answer is very simple, as it is basic. That we need a joint session so that there is no forum shopping. And President Tshisekedi has been accused of jumping a number of meetings when he senses that the outcome may not be sensitive to his needs, or it may not align to his interest. And you recall that is the reason why the East African Standby Force did not make very good progress in DRC, because he wanted the force to dance to his drum beats. But this time round, for this particular session, the two presidents now will be in one room and everybody will present their issues. But it's not as if that the regional presidents don't understand, because all of them have interacted with the critical variables in DRC for the last 50 years. And everybody, even if you speak to, a young man from Amososho, he will tell you that there's no need for a military solution, because in fact, there's no military solution. It's supposed to be a political solution. And as they've been saying that in the interest of Pan-Africanism, then the two leaders, the key leaders, that is President Kagame and Tshisekedi, must ask themselves that what are the issues raised by M23 and who actually needs to talk to M23. Scholars and practitioners are agreed that for this issue to come to an end, President Tshisekedi must speak to M23. There are no two ways. If you want to use an example which is not sensitive, you've got Maasais in Kenya and you've got Maasais in Tanzania. So you cannot wake up one day, you tell all the Maasais in Kenya, move back to Tanzania, or the ones in Tanzania move back to Nairobi, and you expect them to give you red roses, because one group will be disenfranchised, and the one which is disenfranchised will automatically raise their issues. And as we realize, war becomes very emotional. So when you're kicking somebody from his motherland, you are declaring them stateless, then you can be sure even a young man who has barely turned 14 will pick arms and rise.
Dr. I've seen you simmering and, listening to what Dismas is speaking about. But what do you make of this whole back and forth? And we will get to AUC matters in a short while. But the EAC itself and how this conflict has embroiled. Kenya sent troops. The mission ended. This M23 situation has been there, of course, for a while. It's not the first time, but this renewed conflict has potential ramifications to the rest of the region. Could you speak to what perhaps the leaders need to just dust off and get to the real issues instead of just handling the top layer, as it were?
Yeah, I think to a large extent, I want to agree with Dismas that bringing political leaders together from SADC and EAC is very critical. And it's critical for the same reason that if you look for solutions in isolation, then you're likely to build an opportunity for forum shopping, where presidents will start looking for allies and then build their case and run away from the critical issue. And the critical issue is basically why is there conflict? And why is M23 up in arms? So unless we address those critical issues, the issues of politics of self-interest, where leadership wants to attend to issues of a select group of citizens in a particular country at the expense of other citizens who they brand as citizens belonging to another country, simply because of the geographical demarcation of African states, which makes one, despite the linguistic homogeneity, to be in one particular country and other speakers of the same language in another country. Yeah. And from where I see it, I think President Kagame has raised very critical issues. I think we've seen a history of very critical pathways to finding a solution from both President Tshisekedi and other presidents who've been there in terms of trying to find a solution, including President Uhuru Kenyatta. And where we have reached, it's not a question of, who is right and who is wrong. It's a question of why is it that there is conflict? Why is it that there's a group of people in DRC called the M23 who are up in arms? Is it possible for all these leaders to come with clean hands on the table, facilitated by leaders who have nothing but the interest of Africa as a whole and security of this region, to find a common solution, a solution that would ensure that if you're a citizen of a country, you're treated as such, irrespective of the language that you speak, irrespective of the community that exists in the other side.
If I may buttress his points,
Okay.
These artificial boundaries we're talking about were, I understand there was a conference in Berlin a long time ago where white men came with a piece of paper and divided, this shall be Kenya, this shall be Uganda. And that is not long ago, Kenya's vice president was called Moody Awori, while his brother was an ICT minister in Uganda. And these people come from the same family, but they were simply divided by an artificial boundary. And we shouldn't allow Africans ourselves to let those artificial boundaries create unnecessary animosities and tensions.
We will come to you. Just give me a minute, Morara. Hesbon, is it possible, you've raised pertinent questions and I want perhaps to buttress on them. Is it possible for these African leaders to come with these clean hands to the table? How dirty are they?
Well, I don't think they're dirty. I think it's just a question of what interests do they have? And are those interests converging at a space where it is a common African citizen who benefits? And I think it's a question of give and take, that at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be what the leaders get out of these processes. It doesn't have to be what leaders don't get out of this process. It has to be about the people. And I think the history of DRC, for historians, tells you of a very checkered country. A country that is bedeviled by conflict simply because of the wealth that it has. And to a large extent, it's not just a question of these African leaders coming with clean hands. It's a question of these African leaders disentangling themselves from, the Western influence and specifically focusing more on solutions in the global South by the global South. So, I mean, it might look a bit intricate in the sense that individual interests might look like African presidents' interests, but I think there's an overarching influence that they must come clean and say, I'm coming and I'm representing my people, and it is my people and my people only, nothing else.
Nothing else.
So unless we get into that space where we are looking for solutions that would address the plight of the people without reference to any other outside influence, I think those hands, will not be that clean.
Morara, you spoke to the young people in the DRC on your socials, and you spoke about interests. Your tweet was quite controversial in some quarters.
Yes.
Could you perhaps speak to how, as young people, with the agitation that was there, is there a risk of misunderstanding and perhaps giving an opportunity for proliferation of this leaderless movement that came in to what the older generations have argued? We risk going the direction of other countries.
Probably it is important for our viewers tonight to understand just how complex the situation in DRC is, both politically and economically. Because, DRC is a very expansive country. The distance between Goma and Kinshasa is about 2,600 kilometers. So it might actually be closer to come to Nairobi than to go to Kinshasa when you are in Goma. Now, personally, as you've correctly put it, my tweet was somehow controversial to people who found it controversial. But to me, I believe that is a correct position of how things should be. M23 has a mission, and that mission is to protect ethnic Tutsis who are in Goma, that is in Kivu of the DRC. They have a right to protect their own people from being extinct and from being killed. And if you look at the Angolan deal that was made, it speaks about the ethnic Tutsis that are in Congo, that they should be given citizenship, and that even the M23 was supposed to be absorbed into the army In fact, it's not the first time that the M23 has occupied Goma. They occupied it before, but they withdrew from Goma because of that deal. So I believe what is going to make that issue settle is if the M23 is going to be given assurance that the ethnic Tutsis who are in the Democratic Republic of Congo are going to be given citizenship, they are going to be recognized, they are going to be given their right to human rights, and also the M23 is going to be integrated into the army. I do agree with President Kagame on some parts, because President Kagame is justified to be afraid of what is going on in Congo and to participate in that conflict. Many people have brought issues about his participation, but if I was President Kagame, I would definitely participate, because there is an active belligerent force called the FDLR, for the Democratic Liberation of Rwanda, whose intention is actually to overthrow the president of Rwanda and the government of Rwanda. So when you know that there is a belligerent force in a nearby country that is actually being supported by the military of that country to overthrow a legitimately established government here, then you do not expect President Kagame to sit on his hands. So from where I see it, I see that the external forces are the ones that have made the resolution of issues in DRC Congo to be more difficult, because DRC Congo has become like a woman who is heartbroken, and every man she's confiding in wants to sleep with her. So, you know, the DRC Congo government comes and confides in President Ruto. President Ruto takes armed forces into DRC, not for the intention of bringing peace, but also getting a piece of the cake of the minerals. We've had the UN forces in Congo since 1999, and they've achieved absolutely nothing. In fact, recently, I was watching DW, and a vehicle belonging to the United Nations fell. It was involved in an accident, and it overturned, and inside the vehicle were minerals, meaning even people from the United Nations are actually participating in exploitation and extraction of minerals from the DRC. So if external forces were to stay out of this, I believe the people of DRC and even the youth who are there can be able to solve the problem themselves.
Indeed, but interesting perspectives. I see Hesbon is angling to correct you and to point out, or do you want to quickly react to that?
Yeah, I mean, to a large extent, I think they are, without dropping names or, you know, making wild allegations, if there is any prospecting, there is any extraction of minerals in any country in Africa, it should benefit Africans. And I think for as long as, you know, people in DRC are wallowing in poverty and they see lots and lots of minerals getting out of their country, they'll have a problem with that. And that will never end. And I think that puts the leadership in a very, you know, vulnerable position, where even finding solutions to, you know, very basic problems of just fending and providing for your people becomes an opportunity for vested interests to come in and take advantage. And just like I said, I mean, most of these things can be resolved when you dissuade any political leader from, you know, forum shopping, for looking for people to do their bidding. And I think that's the direction that you're taking. And you know, the stance that has been taken by 3 presidents is very important in this case. That when you're in conflict, it is important that you understand that people are taking stands on things that they believe in. So you have President Cyril Ramaphosa, you have President Paul Kagame, and then you have the DRC president. I think they've come out clean with their positions. You know, President Kagame, with whatever he has said, there are people who agree with him, there are people who don't agree with him. But from where he's coming from, at least there is a bone of contention to address the issues that he's raising. President Ramaphosa, the same. And then the interest that President Tshisekedi has is to ensure that there's a country with minerals that serves the people in that country. When these 3 come together, I think most of those fears that my colleague here is raising can easily be addressed. And anyone who is coming with a hand that is not clean would actually remain with soiled hands, and the whole world would see that if they're not bringing solutions.
Indeed. Let's take a break. Dismas will come with you. We need to take a commercial break. When we come back, we have more on this and the state of the nation. Please do stay with us.